The airport was busy. People walked fast. Some looked tired, some excited. Among them walked a tall black man in a clean, sharp suit. His name was Mr. Jordan Miles. He carried a small leather bag. His steps were calm, his eyes kind, but there was something powerful about the way he walked. Quiet confidence, like a man who didn't need to prove anything. As he reached the gate, the flight was already boarding. A young flight attendant looked at his ticket. She raised her eyebrows. "First class?" she said, surprised. Mr. Jordan nodded with a soft smile. "Yes, 1A. She looked at him again, then forced a smile. "Right this way, sir." But as he walked away, she whispered to another crew member, "He must have got upgraded or something." They both laughed. Mr. Jordan heard them, but he didn't stop. Inside the plane, the first-class cabin was quiet and bright. Only a few seats. Big and comfortable. Mr. Jordan placed his bag in the overhead bin and sat down in seat 1A. Another passenger, a white man in a suit, looked at him with surprise, then quickly looked away. A few moments later, a crew member walked up to him. "Sir, are you sure this is your seat?" she asked. Mr. Jordan smiled kindly. "Yes. Would you like to check my ticket?" She hesitated, then said, "No, it's okay." But her face showed doubt, like she didn't believe him. Mr. Jordan sat back, calm, silent. He had seen this before. The first meal. The flight took off. After an hour, the crew began to serve meals. When the flight attendant came to Mr. Jordan's seat, he politely said, "Excuse me, I had requested a special vegan meal." The attendant frowned. "We don't usually serve that in first class." Mr. Jordan answered gently, "I made the request 2 days ago." She sighed. "Let me check." She walked away. But as she passed the curtain, she rolled her eyes and whispered to another crew member, "He's asking for some fancy meal now." They both chuckled. A woman sitting across the aisle noticed the way they acted. She looked at Mr. Jordan, then at the crew, then back again. Something wasn't right. Kindness beside him. An elderly woman sat next to Mr. Jordan. Her name was Mrs. Ellison. She wore a soft green sweater and had kind eyes. She leaned over and whispered, "I'm sorry for how they're treating you." Mr. Jordan turned to her and smiled warmly. "Thank you, but I'm used to it." She frowned. "That doesn't make it right." He nodded slowly. "True, but sometimes it's better to stay quiet and watch." She looked confused. "Watch what?" He replied, "How people reveal who they truly are." Mockery continues. A few minutes later, the attendant returned with a cold salad in a small plastic container. She placed it in front of Mr. Jordan without a word. Then with a loud voice said, "Enjoy your first-class dining experience, sir." Some nearby passengers heard and chuckled. One of the crew members walked past and said under his breath, "Looks like someone's playing rich today." Mrs. Ellison gasped, "That's enough." But Mr. Jordan stayed silent. He picked up his fork and slowly began to eat. His silence wasn't weakness. It was strength. "Something feels off." Mrs. Ellison turned to him. "Why don't you say something? You can report them." Mr. Jordan looked at her, his eyes calm but deep. He said quietly, "Let them laugh. Let them speak. I want them to show the world who they are before the world finds out who I am." Mrs. Ellison didn't understand fully, but she felt something in his voice, a quiet storm. She looked around. People were noticing. The tension in the cabin was growing. Some felt awkward, others curious. But Mr. Jordan just leaned back in his seat, finished his salad, and closed his eyes. Ending hook. As the flight continued, whispers spread among the crew. "Who is he really? Did you see the way he just smiled? Maybe he's famous?" But none of them knew the truth. Not yet. And as the plane flew high above the clouds, Mr. Jordan opened his eyes and looked out the window. He whispered to himself, "Let them enjoy the flight. They won't enjoy the landing." The plane hummed softly as it cut through thick white clouds. Inside the first-class cabin, the air felt thinner, tight with hidden tension and growing curiosity. Mr. Jordan Miles sat still in seat 1A, hands folded, eyes closed as if resting. But he was listening. Every step, Every sigh, every careless word. Low voices, sharp words. Near the galley curtain, two crew members whispered. "Why is he so calm?" the younger one asked. The older shrugged. "Probably scared we'll move him back to economy." Both laughed. A businessman 3 rows back overheard. He frowned and glanced at Mr. Jordan. The laugh seemed wrong, but he chose silence, like most did when comfort battled conscience. Request ignored. The seatbelt light pinged off. Mrs. Ellison, the kind elderly woman beside Mr. Jordan, opened her novel. She noticed his empty glass. "Press the call button, dear," she said softly. Mr. Jordan smiled. "Let's see what happens." He pressed the button. It lit up blue. Minutes passed. A flight attendant finally appeared, but looked straight past him to another row, then turned away. The light stayed on. Mrs. Ellison pressed her own button. The attendant returned, forced a smile at the old woman, then faced Mr. Jordan. "What do you need, ma'am?" she asked, ignoring him again. Mrs. Ellison's voice was steady. "The gentleman would like some water and a napkin." The attendant sighed. "Very well." She fetched the water, set it down with a thud, and walked off without a thank you. Mr. Jordan lifted the glass, unbothered. "Some storms make more noise than rain," he whispered. Rumors in the cabin. An hour later, the cabin lights dimmed for rest, yet whispers traveled like wind through trees. "He doesn't belong up here. Maybe he's pretending. Did you see his watch? Looks expensive." Each little sentence scraped across dignity, but Mr. Jordan let them pass, as if they were only clouds brushing the plane windows. A spark of courage. Across the aisle sat a teenage girl named Lily, flying alone to visit her father. She watched everything. Her mother had taught her that respect is not a souvenir of class, but a right of people. She unbuckled quietly, walked to the galley, and faced the two chatting crew members. "Excuse me," she said. "My neighbor in 1A is being treated unfairly." The older attendant laughed. "Sweetheart, it's adult business." Lily didn't blink. "Kindness is everyone's business," she answered. Then she returned to her seat, cheeks warm, but heart proud. The crew members muttered, annoyed, yet a seed of doubt dropped into their pride. Meal round 2 dinner service began. Silver carts rolled out. Aromas of steak and butter filled the cabin. When Mr. Jordan's turn came, the attendant placed a covered dish before him without a word and walked away. He lifted the lid. Inside lay plain pasta, half cold, no sauce. Mrs. Ellison gasped. "That's not the vegan meal you asked for." Mr. Jordan twirled one noodle with his fork, tasted it, and set the fork down gently. "Their recipe lacks flavor," he said, termite. Across the aisle, the businessman finally spoke. "Excuse me," he called to the passing attendant, voice firm. "Why did he receive this plate? He requested a proper meal." The attendant's smile grew thin. "Sir, kitchen limitations." The businessman shook his head. "I ordered steak 5 minutes ago, and it was medium rare perfection. Try again." Murmurs spread, a small ripple against the silence. The captain's note. Just then a junior attendant approached, cheeks pink. She handed Mr. Jordan a folded slip of paper, then hurried off. He unfolded it discreetly. "Captain needs a word after landing. Confidential." A tiny smile tugged at his lips. He tucked the note into his jacket pocket. Mrs. Ellison noticed. "Everything all right?" "Better than they think," he replied. "Turbulence and truth." The plane hit mild turbulence. Lights flickered. Cups rattled. A loud bump startled passengers. One flight attendant stumbled and spilled coffee on a nearby man. Panic rose. Mr. Jordan stood, steady as stone, helped the man dab his shirt, then guided the stumbling attendant back to balance. She looked into his calm eyes, surprise and a hint of shame mixing on her face. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded, sat back, and buckled in as the captain's voice soothed everyone. "Just a quick bump, folks. We're safe." Passengers breathed easier, and more eyes turned toward Mr. Jordan now with respect, not suspicion. Quiet before landing. The sky outside darkened to deep blue. Seatbelt signs lit once more. Crew rushed to secure cots. Whispers faded. Tension remained. Mr. Jordan straightened his tie, clasped his hands, and looked ahead, beyond the curtain, beyond the cabin, as if seeing the runway already. Mrs. Ellison touched his arm. "Whatever happens next," she said, "I'm glad to have met you." He smiled warmly. "The pleasure is mine, ma'am. Keep your seatbelt tight. Our descent may be eventful." Cliffhanger. The wheels lowered with a soft thud. City lights twinkled below. In the galley, two attendants argued in hushed tones. "The manifest says VIP on board. Why weren't we told?" "Who cares? We'll be off shift in an hour." From seat 1A, Mr. Jordan heard them, closed his eyes, and whispered almost inaudibly, "An hour can change a life, or end a career." The plane touched down, tires screeching lightly. Unknown to the mocking crew, the runway lights were not the only lights waiting for them. The plane rolled gently across the runway, slowing down as the cabin lights turned on. Passengers stretched and gathered their things. But in seat 1A, Mr. Jordan Miles sat still, eyes forward, as if the real journey was just beginning. Tension grows. In the galley, two flight attendants whispered fast. "You saw that message, right?" "Yeah. VIP on board." "But who? Could it be him?" The older one scoffed. "No way. He looks too normal." The younger one bit her lip. Still, something feels strange. Meanwhile, Mr. Jordan reached for his jacket and smoothed out his sleeves. He looked peaceful, but something powerful rested behind his calm. One last push. Just as the plane stopped at the gate, a senior flight attendant walked by with a smug look. She stood next to Mr. Jordan and said loudly, so others could hear, "Well, sir, we hope our service met your standards today." She smiled, but it was fake. Everyone around could feel the sarcasm in her voice. Mr. Jordan looked up at her. "Thank you," he said politely. But she continued, "We've had many VIPs fly with us. You're definitely one of a kind." A few crew members laughed behind her. Another added, "Hope you enjoyed your special 5-star meal, sir." Even some passengers turned to look. Some laughed nervously. Some looked away in shame. Mr. Jordan gently stood up. He looked at the woman with calm eyes. His voice was soft but clear. "Today, you showed everyone who you are. I didn't stop you. I let you speak. I let you laugh." The flight attendant blinked, unsure how to respond. He picked up his bag, adjusted his tie, and said, "Now it's time for me to speak." The surprise arrival. Just then, the cabin door opened, but instead of a regular ground crew, two men in dark suits stepped inside. They wore security badges and earpieces. Passengers looked up in surprise. The men walked straight toward Mr. Jordan. One of them said loudly, "Mr. Jordan Miles, the boardroom is ready. The airline team is waiting." The flight crew froze. Passengers gasped. Mrs. Ellison, sitting nearby, whispered with wide eyes, "You're not just a passenger, are you?" Mr. Jordan gave her a gentle smile. "No, ma'am. I'm the man who signs their paychecks." The truth revealed. The lead security officer turned to the crew. "Ladies and gentlemen, allow us to introduce Mr. Jordan Miles, chairman of the board of directors for this airline." The senior flight attendant's face turned white. The one who mocked him earlier took a step back, mouth slightly open. Even the captain, who had stayed in the cockpit, now walked out and saluted. "It's an honor, sir. We didn't know you were flying today." Mr. Jordan nodded respectfully. "I didn't want special treatment. I wanted the truth, and I got it." Shock and shame. Whispers turned into silence. Passengers began pulling out their phones, recording. The attendants who had laughed earlier now stood frozen, eyes wide, faces red. The woman who served the cold pasta couldn't meet his eyes. The teenage girl, Lily, who had spoken up earlier, smiled proudly. She had known something was off. Words that hit deep. Before leaving the cabin, Mr. Jordan turned around. He looked at the entire crew, then spoke softly. But the whole cabin heard him. "You judged me by my skin, not my seat. You mocked me because I stayed quiet. You thought power always wears a crown. But real power wears silence, until it doesn't." He paused, then looked at the passengers. This flight taught more than miles can measure. He nodded once and walked out. The next morning, the sky over the city was clear, but inside the airline headquarters, a storm was waiting. In a tall glass building on the 14th floor, a long wooden table sat in the center of a quiet room. Around it, the flight crew from Flight 278 sat silently. Each wore a neat uniform, but their faces were pale with worry. A door opened. Mr. Jordan Miles walked in, calm as ever. But today, he wasn't just the quiet man from seat 1A. He was their boss. Eyes wide, mouths shut. No one dared to speak. The senior flight attendant looked down, twisting her fingers. The young male attendant who had laughed earlier looked frozen. Even the crew manager sat stiffly. Mr. Jordan walked slowly to the head of the table. He placed a folder down gently. Then, he looked up at the crew. The question, "Do you know why I'm here?" he asked, his voice soft. One attendant nodded. "Because we failed," she said quietly. Mr. Jordan raised his eyebrow. "Failed who?" he asked. Another replied, "You, sir." He shook his head slowly. "You didn't fail me. You failed yourselves. You failed every person who walks on that plane hoping to feel safe and respected." The room stayed silent. A confession. Then, to everyone's surprise, the youngest attendant stood up. "I was wrong," he said. "I judged you before I even said hello. I followed others. I didn't think for myself." His voice cracked. "I didn't know who you were. But now, I know what I did was ugly." Mr. Jordan nodded. "That takes courage," he said. The young man sat down, eyes wet. Truth behind the silence. Mr. Jordan opened the folder in front of him. Inside were printed comments from past passengers. He read aloud. "The crew was cold to me. I felt like I didn't belong. I was treated differently. I thought maybe I was imagining it. The flight was fine, but the faces weren't kind." He looked up. These weren't just about one flight. These came from many. It wasn't one mistake. It was a pattern. An unexpected decision. The crew braced themselves. They were ready to be fired. Mr. Jordan looked at each of them, then closed the folder. "I'm not here to fire anyone," he said. Eyes widened. Whispers broke out. "But I am here to change everything." He paused. "You will not return to duty yet. You'll attend respect training. Not once, but every week for 3 months. You'll learn what service means, not just to VIPs, but to everyone. A new beginning." The crew seemed surprised. Some looked relieved. Others looked ashamed. "But we don't deserve a second chance," one whispered. Mr. Jordan replied firmly. "You're right, you don't. But I'm not giving this to you for you. I'm giving it to the passengers who fly next. They deserve a better version of you." The promise. He stood to leave. Before walking out, he turned back and said, "The next time you serve someone, remember this. Kindness is free, but cruelty always has a cost." He walked out, leaving the crew in deep silence. But behind him, something was already changing. Ending with a hook. As Mr. Jordan stepped into the hallway, a young intern rushed up to him. "Sir, there's a video. It's going viral." She showed him a phone screen. It was a clip of him on the plane. Calm, kind, powerful. Millions had watched it. Thousands were sharing it. And in the comments, one sentence stood out. "This man didn't raise his voice, but he changed everything." News websites posted headlines like, "Black executive silently exposes racist flight crew." "Man mocked on flight turns out to be airline boss." The video of Mr. Jordan speaking calmly in first class had been viewed over 15 million times. But more powerful than the video were the comments. People speak up. Under the video, thousands of passengers began to share their own stories. A nurse wrote, "I flew first class after winning a free ticket. The crew treated me like I didn't belong." A father said, "I saved for a vacation with my family. They called me cheap when I asked for water twice." An older black woman commented, "Mr. Jordan gave us all a voice. He didn't shout, but we heard him loud." Media pressure builds. News channels invited experts. Talk shows brought in guests. Everyone was talking about one thing. Is racism hiding behind airline smiles? Some defended the crew. Others said this wasn't new. But almost all agreed Mr. Jordan had shown the truth without anger, and that made it more powerful. The airline reacts. Inside the airline headquarters, top management worked all night. They had never seen this kind of public pressure before. One executive said, "If we don't fix this now, we'll lose trust forever." Another added, "He didn't fire anyone, but the world wants us to act." They created a new plan called Sky Respect. Every crew member must go through bias and respect training. Passengers could now report treatment directly to upper management, and every complaint would be reviewed by a panel led by Mr. Jordan Miles himself. Change begins. The next morning, posters were placed in airports. Every seat deserves respect. Every voice deserves to be heard. Flight attendants were called to new training programs. And Mr. Jordan? He stayed quiet in public, but behind the scenes, he worked harder than ever. He wasn't just fixing a flight. He was rebuilding a system. A stranger reaches out. One evening, Mr. Jordan sat in his office when his assistant walked in. "Sir," she said softly, "someone left this for you." It was a letter, handwritten. It read, "Dear Mr. Miles, I was one of the passengers on your flight. I didn't speak up when they mocked you. I regret it every day, but your calm strength gave me courage. I teach my students about you now. Thank you for showing the world what real leadership looks like." A quiet voice, now louder. Mr. Jordan smiled. Ending with a hook, he looked out of his window at the night sky. Planes flew overhead, lights blinking. Somewhere up there, more people were flying, hoping to be treated with kindness. He knew the fight wasn't over, but it had started, and the next step? He would take it himself. It was a sunny morning. The airport was busy, full of rushing footsteps and rolling bags. But in the middle of the noise, one man stood still. Mr. Jordan Miles looked at the big screen above the check-in counter. Flight 401, Gate B7, on time. He took a deep breath. This was his final flight, not as a boss, not as a businessman, but as a passenger again. A familiar uniform. As he walked toward Gate B7, he saw them. The flight crew stood in a line, greeting passengers. Some were new, but a few were the same crew from Flight 278. The young attendant who once mocked him now smiled nervously. He stepped forward. "Good morning, Mr. Miles," he said gently. Mr. Jordan smiled. "Good morning. You remembered my name." The attendant replied, "I'll never forget it." Inside the plane, Mr. Jordan took his seat in first class. 1A again. But this time, something was different. The air was warmer. The smiles were real. And when a flight attendant offered him a meal, she asked with care, "Would you like the chicken or the vegetarian option, sir?" He replied, "Chicken, please, and thank you." She nodded with respect. A whisper from behind. As the plane took off, an elderly woman sitting behind him leaned forward. "I saw your story," she said softly. "What you did gave us all hope." Mr. Jordan turned and smiled. "Thank you, ma'am." "You changed the sky," she added. "You made it kinder." He didn't know what to say, so he just nodded. The flight that changed everything. As they flew over the clouds, Mr. Jordan looked out the window. He remembered the first flight. The laughs. The looks. The silence. But now, something had changed. Not just in the airline, but in the hearts of the people. Crew members were helping with patience. Passengers were smiling at one another. It was small, but it was real. A final message. When the flight landed, the captain made a special announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, before you leave, we'd like to thank a very special passenger today, Mr. Jordan Miles, who reminded us all what true leadership, respect, and kindness look like." People clapped. Some stood. And for the first time in a long time, Mr. Jordan felt seen. Not as a businessman, not as a VIP, but as a human being. Back on the ground, as he stepped off the plane, a young boy looked up at him and asked, "Are you the man who fixed the planes?" Mr. Jordan smiled and knelt down. No, he said softly. I just helped fix the people.